There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on, none of which has to do with the fact that 3,000 of my countrymen are dying.
When I got to know you, and I think when millions of other people got to know you, was on September 11th, 2001. You were anchoring CNN's morning coverage that morning, which you probably thought was just going to be like any other morning, and then very quickly it was not. There's a rumor out there that you've already started correcting me before we started here, that that was actually your first day at CNN, but you're telling me that's not the case.
No, it's such a good story. And, I don't know how many times I've been interviewed. I don't know how many times this has come up. I don't know how many times I've said, honestly, I love this story too. I wish it was true, but it's not. And it's such a good story that they would write it anyway. So
how did that come to be, that people thought that that was your first morning?
I'm sorry?
How did that come to be that people thought that that was your first morning on CNN?
Well, I'm not sure I know. If I were to guess, there are days and there are days. And I had been doing, I anchored the weekend show. I did 20 nightlines a year. I was on television a fair amount in my life, but none of those days is 9/11. And so all of a sudden, this kind of funny looking dude with glasses shows up on your TV screen on the biggest day in your country's modern history. And you say, well, that's not Peter, and that's not Dan, and that's not Tom. And I've never seen this funny looking dude before. He must be new. And I honestly think that's what happened, that it wasn't that it, on an average night, CNN, probably had 1 million people watching. The president's stem cell speech, President Bush's stem cell speech, which I anchored, was in August. Maybe 1 million people watched that. 20 million people in America watched 9/11. 1.25 billion people around the world watched CNN. And from September 11th to Thanksgiving, I was on TV. You couldn't avoid me. I was like a disease, and I was constantly there. I was on TV 8 hours a day, every day, until I finally went home to my wife and kid, and we went away for Thanksgiving weekend. So I just think the newness of it all probably helped create the myth.
All right,
but you know what? If that's the worst myth there is about you, I can live with that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, well, hopefully we've dispelled that fake news for all time. But let's talk about that morning. So obviously you had plenty of other jobs in broadcasting well before that, and anchoring and all sorts of things. But clearly there was nothing that could possibly prepare you for what was going to happen that morning. As 8:47 rolled around, what was it like that morning?
Well, it was crazy. I don't know that I understand what you mean when you say nothing can prepare you for that, because that's actually, in a kind of literal way, true. You've never dealt with an attack on your country, all of these things that 9/11 was. All of that's true. On the other hand, I think I prepared my whole life for that day. No one wants that day, but if there's going to be a day like that, I wanted to be the person to tell the story. I felt capable of telling the story. I understood the magnitude of the story. I had done the 93 World Trade Center bombing by Al Qaeda. I felt I knew what was happening. At the same time, I'm not going to lie to you. There's that little part of every guy who's going, "Do not screw this up." And do not make this worse. This is a horrible day in your country's history. And the last thing they need is for you to do something stupid. So that was there.
Yeah. So the main thing and the reason why I wanted to have you on, and I've actually been trying to track you down for quite some time, is that as someone that lived in New York City during 9/11, I mean, all of us, we would go out for groceries, but basically beyond that, we were glued to the television, and not just people that lived in New York City, everybody that lived in America and really across the world. But there was something about your demeanor. There was a calmness and a decency to it that is so, I would say, the complete 180 of so much of what cable news has become now. And I'm wondering, is that just something that is sort of personally part of who you are? Is that sort of what you wanted your television persona to be? Or did it all just sort of unfurl live?
Thank you. I mean, I take that all as a compliment. I don't know that I ever, there was a period when I was at ABC when I thought I had a television persona, and it was horrible. I mean, it was honestly, it was. I thought I was supposed to be Peter. I admired Peter. I thought I was supposed to be more formal than I am. I'm just a guy from a small town in Minnesota, and I think I'm at my best, or was at my best, when I was just me. And I am actually fairly calm. I'm not much of a hyper. I don't like, I don't want to use anyone's as an example, but I don't use the word dramatic very often. I don't tell people this is going to be dramatic. If it's dramatic to them, it's dramatic to them.
Do you remember feeling the pressure though, as that first plane hit and it was still unclear whether it was a terrorist attack? Do you remember feeling the inherent pressure?
I mean, the first plane hit, I wasn't on TV, so I don't know. The second plane, when the second plane hit, I knew what was happening. First plane, I thought, I don't know, maybe somebody had a heart attack. I don't. I mean, I'd come into LaGuardia hundreds of times, and you would come up the river, and you'd go past the Trade Center, and I thought, well, I don't know. I mean, this crazy stuff happened. Somebody crashed into the building. When the second plane hit, then there was no question anymore. I said, this is an attack on the country. This is Al Qaeda. No one else has the wherewithal to pull off something like this. There was no war on terror as such, but this is the war on terror beginning. This is it. Yeah.
What's it like being in a newsroom in those moments when something truly horrific is happening?
You should have someone who's in the newsroom.
Well, they're funneling information to you, and you're.
I know that, for example, I mean, I was on the roof of a building, of our building in 38th and 8th. And it wasn't a studio. They were trying to throw up lights, and just crazy stuff was going on. I'm afraid of heights, and guys are on scaffolding, so I'm afraid someone's going to fall off. And it was nuts. And the control room, I was pretty sure was crazy because I've been in control rooms. But the control room's job, in case you don't know, you probably do know this, is
the guys over there know it.
Yeah, right. However crazy they are at any given moment, they do not transmit that insanity to you, because what you need to know is information and that everything is under control. It's not.
Yeah.
And there's some part of you that knows it's not. The things that were supposed to work aren't working, that someone who is supposed to be ready isn't, that somebody says something stupid you're going to have to correct. All those things are going on, and they're yelling at each other. I remember I was doing the weekend show at ABC, and I brought my daughter, and she was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. maybe a little older. And she was in the control room, and after the show, she came down, and she was a 7, 8-year-old who watched a TV show. Not that she cared that her dad was doing the TV show. It was just the magic of it. And she said, "Dad, do you know they say the F word up there?" So I think I think there are two different places. There's the place I occupied, which I owned. I owned that space. The people there were reflective of my emotional state and supported my emotional state, which was calm. And there's that other world, the newsroom, which was crazy, the control room, which is insane. Everybody who's there's Atlanta, which is wanting control of the show. There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on, none of which has to do with the fact that 3,000 of my countrymen are dying.